Welcome back to the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI with KC Sports Network. My name is Killian Wright, joined as always by Zach Knox-Doyle. And today we're going to have a segment for you guys about some of the most important losses for Mizzou football over the offseason and how they're going to replace them. But before that, we've got some news to get into. It's been a surprisingly kind of busy week with little tidbits of news since we last saw you guys. Most recently, something happened with a summer league. So as you guys know, we put out some content tracking where every Mizzou player was in summer league. And one of those guys was Shawn Phillips on the New Orleans Pelicans, as he was originally reported to be on that Pelicans summer league roster by 247 Sports. And then a few weeks later, the Pelicans put their summer league roster out. Shawn Phillips is nowhere to be found. I'm not exactly sure what went on there. Obviously, Shawn Phillips is a part of that group of athletes who are mostly from Ohio, who are suing the NCAA for an extra year of eligibility. Guys who are in that 2022 high school class who just finished their senior season. So maybe something went on there. I don't know. Don't want to speculate too much, but either way, Shawn Phillips is not on the roster for the Pelicans Summer League roster. Two guys who are on Summer League rosters, though, since we last saw you guys, Javon Porter signed with the Memphis Grizzlies Summer League roster, which I'll let Zach get to that in a second, but that was pretty surprising on my end. He's got an NBA body. That is true, and that's about it. Shawn East made the Cleveland Cavaliers roster. He's the furthest removed from Mizzou to make a Summer League roster. It's been a bit since he was wearing black and gold, obviously, that 23-24 season that a lot of you guys don't want to remember at all, and I don't blame you for it, but he's representing them pretty good. Has been pretty good in the Canadian League and the G League the past couple of years. But Zach, any thoughts on Javon Porter and Shawn East making Summer League rosters?
Well, kind of like you said, I was pretty shocked with Javon Porter making a roster spot on the Grizzlies. He did play 2 minutes in their first game. It was a 31-point win, and then was a DNP against the Jazz on Monday. So he has not done a whole lot necessarily. And I don't really expect him to. I mean, I didn't even expect him to get onto this roster spot. But good for him. Like you said, he does have an NBA body. And I think that translates to maybe being a G League player, playing a little bit in the Summer League, something like that. Don't really see the upside translating to NBA talent, but can never be too wrong there. So we'll have to see. But I really don't expect him to go much further than that, but I could see him getting some real G League minutes for sure. And then looking at Shawn East, that is a guy that I think could get a lot of minutes in the Summer League. He didn't play in the Summer League last year, but he played in 2024 for the Lakers. He got like 24 minutes a game. I think it was around 7 points. And then last year, he really emerged in the G League, averaged 19 points, 5 assists. He had really good shooting splits. I think this is a guy that could go and do really well in the Summer League. Maybe have that push him to a 2-way contract and maybe get a little bit of playing time in the NBA. He's a guy that lit it up for Missouri when obviously that was a rough year, 23-24. But you look at the averages and Shawn East was one of the only shining parts of that team. And he's been exceptional in the G League. It looks like it's transferring well so far. So the next step I would think is NBA. But he's also 26. So you gotta remember now's kind of his time to get going.
Yeah, theoretically, he'd be entering his peak right about now, which is interesting for a guy who in your head kind of seems younger than he is. But like you said, he's probably is a guy who's going to do really good in Summer League. He's always been a really efficient scorer against guys who are around this level of play, Summer League, college, and then a little bit lower of a level, Canadian Elite Basketball League, which he set the scoring record in last year. That's a little bit lower level competition than both Summer League and college, but you can see he scaled up and was one of their best players of all time there. So East, I think in a best case scenario, East is probably a guy who shines in Summer League, gets a full-time G League spot this year somewhere, is really good in the G League, and then like maybe in March or April gets called up for an unserious team and looks pretty good. As far as Javon Porter, he's pretty theoretical as an NBA guy. Like the body is there. If he hustles a little harder, maybe makes his effort on the glass a little more impactful and all of a sudden start shooting 38% from three, sure. I'm not totally sure if any of that's going to happen, but that would be the path for Javon. Otherwise, he'll probably be a pro guy overseas, maybe in the G League. But yeah, other summer league stuff. Tamar Bates and Mark Mitchell are listed. Well, Tamar Bates is on the Jazz's summer league roster. He is on a 2-way contract, and he's older than a lot of the guys on the roster, so he might not play. I know he hasn't been playing in the Salt Lake City Classic. You might see him in Vegas, which begins on July 9th. And then Mark Mitchell, I would certainly expect to see playing in summer league with Denver. For Bates, I think it's maybe a little less important than it is for Mitchell because Bates is on a 2-way contract. He'll probably be on Utah's roster at the start of the season and was really, really good in the G League last year when he did play. Mark Mitchell, obviously on an Exhibit 10, by no means is guaranteed any spot on either the Grand Rapids Gold or the Denver Nuggets. So, Zach, maybe what are you looking for from each of those guys in terms of their summer league outlook?
Well, for Bates, like you said, I don't think he has to play in the summer league. He's already got the 2-way contract. Like you said, great in the G League. So it's looking like we're 2 games in as of this recording in the G League for Bates, and he's been, or not the G League, the Summer League, and he's been DNP in both of those. It'll be interesting to see once they go to Vegas, see if he gets any run, but I don't think he needs to either way. Now, Mark Mitchell, this is very important. The Summer League is his testing ground, in my opinion, which will start on Friday for him. He'll play Friday, Saturday, Tuesday, and Thursday, so he'll have a very busy week. And I think most importantly, what's going to be something that he really needs to watch out for is this is all a lot of games really close together. It's 4 games in about 6 days, maybe 4 games in 7 days, actually. But still, lots of games, that kind of like how the NBA is. But I also think he needs to, because of that, he needs to pace himself. He doesn't need to necessarily just drive, because what we saw this year is that he can do more than that now. He became a great facilitator. He started shooting the ball really well. So I think if Mitchell just showcases all of his talents, puts it all out there on defense, tries to knock down a couple shots, facilitates, also drives, just puts it all together, I think that's really going to be the key for him in the summer league.
Yeah, I think you're looking at a lot of stuff for Mitchell, but yeah, I think him becoming a little bit more of the do-it-all dirty work rather than the do-it-all star is probably what you're looking for. Because realistically, he won't be a star at the NBA level. Very few guys can. And so you're looking at these complementary aspects for him. And that'll be interesting to watch. Obviously, there's been some guys who have looked good in Summer League from Mizzou in the past. With Bates, it is worth mentioning that I believe his contract with the Jazz didn't become official until after their first Summer League Salt Lake City Classic game. And then it was like just before their second game. So he probably hadn't even had the opportunity to practice yet with the team, if I had to guess. So that could be the reason why he's not playing in Salt Lake City Classic. I wouldn't rule out him playing in the standard Vegas Summer League. But like you said, he probably won't play too much as he is on that 2-way. And I'd imagine they wouldn't cut him before the season starts. It does happen, but not too often. So I'd imagine you're seeing Tamar Bates in Utah next year. And hey, maybe Shawn East too, because Shawn East was with the Salt Lake City Stars. They were with, I think that's Utah's G League affiliate name. He was there last year. So maybe you'll see Bates and East actually playing together a little bit, which that would be pretty cool. See those guys reunite as pretty much the only 2 bright spots of that 23-24 season. And unless you also count Nick Honor as a bright spot, but he won't be in the G League. So yeah, enough with the Summer League news, unless you've got any more final thoughts there, Zach.
I think that's all I've got. It is interesting to think about maybe Shawn East could slide back to Utah because he was really successful on that G League team last year. So that'll be something to keep an eye on if he doesn't necessarily have too great of a summer league with the Cavs.
Yeah, I'm sure they would be happy to have him back. Moving on from summer league stuff, but sticking with Mizzou basketball, Dennis Gates went on John Rothstein's show earlier this week, or I guess it was last week at this point, and said openly that he wants to continue the Kansas rivalry and it won't be holding him up. Obviously, things he's said in the past has very much hinted toward him believing this way, talking about how much he likes having the rivalry game. He outright said that it won't be him. He wants the series to continue. If the series doesn't continue, he basically just pinned it on Kansas, which is interesting. Zach, any thoughts on that?
I think Dennis Gates has the same opinion that all Mizzou fans do, and is that they want to keep this going. Mizzou's 1-4 since the new contract was written up when they added those 6 games. But that one win was that court storm when Mizzou took down Kansas when they were number 1 at home. Killian, I think you were there at that time, correct?
Yeah,
so
I was at that game. Yeah,
that was pretty insane to watch. I'm sure it was insane to be there, and I think that brings up, like, not only is it, well, in that case, it didn't actually bring revenue to the school because of, you're not supposed to court storm. But I think it does bring a lot of attention to Mizzou. I think it helps with fans. It's exactly what the fans want. And that's what, at the end of the day, you want to please them. You want to be able to give them what they want. They want Kansas. They just brought football back for Kansas and Mizzou. And that was one of the best games all year. Had a crazy show out, insane crowd that got national recognition. So in both levels, basketball and football, it's a rivalry that is a lot of fun from both sides and something that I think should continue. And I'm really glad that Gates said that. It is interesting, though, now, because now it's just it's up to Kansas.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it on the head, obviously, which is I would venture to say that 99% of Missouri and Kansas fans want this series to continue on the court. And I really see no argument against it, to be totally honest, at least from Missouri's perspective, which is obviously why Dennis Gates is saying he wants to continue, because why wouldn't you? It's a great rivalry game, great way to keep the fans hooked. Even if for some reason the team isn't looking too good, that'll keep your fans interested. The one thing, obviously, is eliminate that neutral site. In my opinion, I'm not the biggest fan of neutral site games. Obviously, I know they have to happen sometimes, but I feel like in cases where it's these multi-year contracts, there's no need for neutral site, especially if it's in a place like Kansas City where you're just going to flip the ticket sales each year and say, oh, Missouri gets the de facto home or Kansas gets the de facto home. Why not just play at home and away then? If you're not going to split the ticket sales 50-50, why not just play home and away? Get those guys in Allen Fieldhouse. Get those guys in Mizzou Arena. Obviously, the court storming in the 24-25 season, that was ridiculous to see live. It was crazy. The whole place was jumping. The energy in that game from the Mizzou crowd was one of the highest energy basketball games I've ever been at. And I would really like to see what it's like in Allen Fieldhouse. I don't want to keep staying in these neutral site areas. So I think that's the one change I would make. That's cherry picking. Even then, I think overall the series is great. Needs to continue. Gates nailed it on the head. I guess we'll see what happens. I'm sure after or before and after the Kansas game, Bill Self will be asked about his ideas for potentially continuing it or not. That's if Bill Self isn't doing a retirement tour and if he sticks around for multiple years after this one. So lots of ifs there, but I think consensus between you, me, most of the media, most of the fans is the series should probably continue.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Gates as well.
Yes. Moving on to some Mizzou football talk. At the time of recording, 4-star 2027 East St. Louis cornerback Raheem Floyd has not announced his decision. When you guys see this video, he will have announced his decision. He's picking between Mizzou and Florida. He is teammates with 2027 commit Jabari Lofton, who's been committed to Mizzou for a couple months. He is also from East St. Louis, where guys like Toriano Pride, Luther Burden, CJ Bass played their high school days. You can check out our website at this point. Our article will be up to if Floyd has committed. We will have some content up on Floyd's commitment. If not, he's probably gone to Florida. So go ahead and check out Missouri Tigers on SI, see if we've got anything there. But Floyd would be a big get for the recruiting class as a 4-star corner. Obviously, you can never have too much corner depth in the vein of you're only as strong as your weakest link. So he'd be a big pickup to have. Obviously, the East St. Louis pipeline has been pretty good for Mizzou in recent years, even with Toriano Pride last year at the same position as Floyd. And also that would be interesting for Floyd to commit because that would mean you've got 2 pairs of teammates on the team, as I believe Caskey and NJ Chalk play high school ball together. And then you would have Lofton and Floyd as 2 pairs of high school teammates in the same class. So that would be some interesting stuff. Zach, any thoughts on Floyd if he does potentially commit?
Yeah, I think if he would commit, I think it would be really cool to see the teammate aspect of it. I think regardless, if you have teammates playing together that played in high school, or if it's basketball, they played in AAU, whatever, I think there's an extra connection there, and it really does help with team chemistry. So I think that's kind of the big thing I'm looking at. And then also adding another 4-star corner would be exceptional, or I believe that would be the first 4-star corner that Mizzou signed, correct?
I believe, let me double check you.
Yeah, I believe he would be the first 4-star corner, which is a pretty big get for Mizzou. He's a highly sought after guy. So I think it'd be a great addition. Nice to have some teammates on the team together, but by the time this comes out, you guys will know if he's a Gator or a Tiger.
Yeah, Floyd would be the first 4-star corner in the class. They had Tari Miller commit a few weeks ago as a 3-star, but it'd just be him. It would just be Miller and Floyd as the corners in this class so far. So definitely getting the second corner would be nice. If they miss out on Floyd, definitely expect them to try and get another one. You've got some safeties in the class, obviously, like Lofton and Govan, who are promising. But yeah, corners, never hurts to have too many corners. All right, and with that, we're going to go to break real quick. We will be back with our top 5 most impactful losses of Mizzou's offseason. But before that, here's a quick break.
With Yuka Color Bar, what we're offering is luxury color services, but we're doing it on our client schedules. Didn't want to feel like or be a traditional salon. We wanted it to really feel like something completely different, especially for the Kansas City area. What we were trying to do is trying to find a brick and mortar that we could put a salon in. And it got complicated. And so what we ended up doing was pivoting, and we went into like a business acquisition mode where we were going to find a hair salon and then we were going to turn it into what we wanted to do. And Emprise was 100% behind that.
Like, we didn't just have a contact, we had a team, and they cared. And
we never sat in limbo at all with Emprise. They pushed us through, they helped us, support us. And not only that, but they've been our biggest cheerleaders since the day one.
Everybody who wanted our money, it was very difficult. It was very challenging part of it. But the people who were giving us the money, Emprise Bank, that was the easiest part. So we will always be grateful to Emprise.
I'm Cricket.
I'm JC.
And together we're the owners of Yuka Color Bar.
Come see us at Park Place.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
All right, for our segment today, Zach and I are going to go through our top 5 most impactful losses over the course of Mizzou football's offseason. Guys that we think are going to be the most difficult to replace, whether it be production, locker room, leadership status. These are the guys that we think their lost impact may be felt the most. Zach, if you have any honorable mentions, list those off. If not, you can just hop straight in and go with your number 5 most impactful loss.
I had one honorable mention, which was Josiah Trotter. I have a feeling he might be on your list. I'm not sure. He's a guy that was drafted pretty highly and I just think because of his youth and Mizzou's strength at linebacker this year, that's the reason I didn't end up putting him on this list, but definitely a big loss for Missouri. But I do think that linebacker corps that they have is very strong. So number 5 for me is going to be Connor Tollison. He was the center not only last year, but the year before that, and before that, and before that. He played 5 years at Mizzou, started at center since 2022. He had 4 years of starting experience. In 2023, Mizzou was a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award, which is just for the best offensive line. And Tollison held that down, started every single game at center as just a redshirt sophomore. I think that just goes to show how consistent he was through his entire career. Last year took 876 snaps, only allowed 3 sacks. He's just a guy that has really held down the fort for Missouri for a long time. I do think they have a decent backup, Dominic Giudice, who started last year. He's a great replacement this year. He's 6'4", 312. Started last year, had over 900 snaps at left guard. He's going to have to switch, so I think that'll maybe take a couple of games to get into the swing of things. That's the reason I didn't have Connor Tollison higher on this list, because I feel pretty confident in Giudice, but definitely Tollison's a guy that put his heart into Missouri, put it all out there for a long time. So he's my number 5.
I agree with everything you said, and even more so because, spoiler alert, I do have Tollison a little higher. So he will be on my list a little bit higher, but I agree with pretty much everything you said, obviously, as a consistent 4-year starter. I'll go more into detail when I talk about why I placed him where I did. But going back here, Josiah Trotter as an honorable mention, I think if we were making the list of just top 5 players Mizzou lost over the offseason, Trotter would certainly be on that list, probably in that 3 or 4 spot, right up there with Zion and Damon and Keagen. But I think, like you kind of touched on, the linebacker room is really strong with Rodriguez and Woodyard. And so while I don't think either are necessarily as good as Trotter, I don't think his impact is going to be too sorely missed because I think Rodriguez and Woodyard are really good and will keep that unit more than just afloat, but I think they'll keep it thriving. So I didn't have Trotter on my list. Honorable mention, I had Toriano Pride. He came on really strong last year in the second half of the season, and the second corner spot is certainly up in the air right now. And whoever the second cornerback may be certainly doesn't exactly have the same resume that Pride did entering last season. So I had Pride as an honorable mention. Number 5 for me was Dylan Carnell. Kind of in the same vein you described Tollison as. Carnell has been a multi-year starter in that star position. He was so versatile, could really do it all, could play in the box when you needed him, could drop back, could play in the slot. He was really nice. And then obviously as a veteran in the safety room last year, kind of leading that group, he kind of stuck out as, like, even if Banner sometimes looked really, really good as an individual player, Carnell still kind of felt like the leader of that group. And now, obviously, after 5 seasons with Mizzou, and by the way, 5-year Tiger like Tollison, that doesn't happen too often anymore. So that's a big deal too. But Carnell being out of the safety room now, I think you're not only going to miss his presence on the field as a versatile guy who was able to play that star position so uniquely for you, but also as a guy in the locker room who was able to lead that secondary for the longest time. And we touched on it a little bit in our depth chart video, but there's some guys who look like they can replace Dylan Carnell as the star, but I don't think replacing him is going to be even close to easy. You can hope that you get a guy like Kensley Luedorf-Austin who does similar things that Dylan Carnell did, but expecting him to do it at the level Carnell did immediately, I think that might be a tough ask. And I think Mizzou's going to find out that maybe Dylan Carnell has to be recreated in the aggregate a little bit more than just swapping one guy in for him because he was so versatile.
Yeah, and that leads right into my number 4, Killian. My number 4 is Dylan Carnell, someone that had put so much time into Missouri, which doesn't happen very often. 3-year starter. I think Missouri maybe got a little spoiled. You have a 4-year starter in Tollison, 3-year starter in Carnell. You're not going to get that very often anymore, especially as transfer portal continues to ramp up. Looking at his career stats, 57 games played, 175 tackles, 5 interceptions, 24 pass blockups. Like, this guy did pass breakups, excuse me. This guy did everything. 3 fumble recoveries. So exactly what you want at the star. He's reliable. He was able to switch between the positions, be very versatile. Exactly what Missouri needed for 3 years. And I agree with you. They're not going to be able to most likely replace him with a guy that's going to stay with Missouri for 5 years, start for 3. That's just pretty unlikely. Now, there is a chance, but this year, you really hope that Luedorf-Austin can step up. We both had him starting at star. The difference is he's about 40 pounds lighter and 3 inches shorter than Carnell. So that's going to have to be something. They're going to have to use him a little bit differently. He made 3 starts with Auburn last year, was above average against run defense. I really like him, but he's not going to be a guy that's going to start for you for 3 years. Looking at maybe a younger guy that could become a pillar for Missouri, Jaden McGregory. He was a 4-star, 6'2" safety that was number 21 safety in the country. He's going to be coming into his freshman year. Highly athletic, multifaceted guy. So he could be someone that can maybe step into that position and really grow as a Missouri Tiger. But yeah, Carnell it's a real tough loss for the Tigers, but I feel pretty confident in Luedorf-Austin for this year. He's looking pretty solid based off how he played last year.
Yeah, he definitely looks promising. And then kind of on the younger side, like you mentioned, like Jaden McGregory looks like he could be a really good traditional safety. And then Jadon Blair looks like he could be like a fun box safety, and CJ Bass is a nickel guy. So there's a lot of guys in these younger classes for Missouri who look like they could maybe recreate Carnell down the line. But I think we are certainly going to see the impact lost in the early weeks of the season and maybe throughout the season. And that's not even, again, necessarily to say that we think any of these guys tasked with replacing Carnell are going to be bad. I just think it's going to be noticeable, the difference between Carnell and them, because Carnell it made his way to the NFL, obviously, with Pittsburgh. Last I checked on ESPN, he was actually listed as a linebacker with the Steelers. So I'd be interested to see what ends up going on there, but that's just kind of a testament to show how big and physical of a guy he is. My number 4 was, I guess you could say, in an opposite vein of Dylan Carnell, as it was a guy who just spent 1 year here in Damon Wilson II. And that 1 year was amazing, but it was also just 1 year, and he left in a pretty weird way. So I think that's why I had him a little lower on my list. He's really talented, obviously, was right there with Zion in terms of production last year. Really strong, really explosive off the edge, lived up to all the transfer portal hype, but then decided to transfer again and make his way to Miami, kind of ghosting Mizzou on the way out, and leaving a little bit of a sour taste. I don't think he necessarily probably had the impact of guys who are multi-year starters like the Tollisons, like Carnell, or these big, strong locker room presence guys like Zion clearly was. So I think that's maybe why I had Wilson a little bit lower. But at the end of the day, he's still extremely productive edge. He's going to be one of the best edge rushers in the nation next year again. He's and as far as Mizzou's edge room goes, there's not a lot of guaranteed production there next year. That's something we've touched on, how there's a lot of guys that we like who have these really high potentials and these interesting frames and were really highly regarded prospects. But there's not a lot of prior production. It's really just Darius Smith as the only guy who's regularly produced at the P5 level. So you're kind of looking at an interesting group of guys there, and no one who's really guaranteed to replace what you lost in Damon.
Yeah, we're following this trajectory where you say a guy at 4 or you say a guy at 5 and I say him at the next spot. I have Damon Wilson at my 3. I think if the edge rusher room was a little bit stronger, I might have been able to push Wilson at 4, push him. I mean, I can certainly see 4, push him at 5, maybe even an honorable mention if that room was really strong. But Darius Smith, like you said, the only guy that kind of has that P5 experience right now in the edge rusher room. And we talked about it last week. We had like 8 different guys that we could be like, okay, they could start alongside Darius Smith. So something to really, really keep in mind. And I think Missouri is going to miss that. He had a team high 9 sacks last year. He was the 34th ranked pass rusher nationally, according to PFF. So a guy that really just disturbed a lot of things. Because he only played 1 season, I didn't have him higher on my list, but certainly just some really raw talent, a guy that's most likely going to get drafted pretty high this year, just 21 years old. So certainly a big loss for Missouri and not being able to retain him for 1 more year, since he still is going into his senior season. I think if you look at it from that standpoint, it feels like a little bit bigger of a loss.
I agree. Yeah. In terms of pure talent, he is right there with anyone. And that talent was special to watch for that 1 year. And it's unfortunate for the Tigers that it ended up being just 1 year, because I think him and Darius Smith could have been really nice alongside each other. Obviously, they both were at Georgia a few years ago, reunited, and then didn't get to start alongside each other, but played alongside each other for a year. I guess we won't know. But yeah, I think Damon sticking around could have been real fun for the edge rush group, but went somewhere else. So is what it is. His production will be missed, though, regardless of the way his tenure ended or the length of his tenure. At number 3, I went back to the Carnell vein. This is where I had Tollison at. All the things you touched on, I agreed with. A 4-year starter is going to be hard to replace, no matter how you viewed kind of the end. Obviously, he maybe didn't live up to the hype that people maybe once had a couple years ago of how he would be in a senior season. I know at one point he was pretty consensusly high on some draft boards about being like potential 2nd, 3rd round guy. Didn't end up doing that. was rehabbing from the torn ACL going into his senior season, still was overall a pretty good player in his senior season, well, redshirt senior season in 2025. And he's going to be hard to replace as a 4-year starter, as the center, the quarterback of that offensive line, the leader of that group for so many seasons. And then the guy who's going to be replacing him is going to be Dominic Giudice, who started at left guard for all of last season, played a little bit of center the season before at Michigan, but didn't outright win the job. Won the job to start the season in training camp due to some injuries, and then the starter came back, and Giudice lost it around the middle of the season, around that week 5, week 6 mark, I believe, and then didn't start at center again that year. So it's going to be a bit of a turn back the clock for Giudice to start at center, and he's never done it at Missouri, obviously. And I think having a first time starting center with a new quarterback and a new offensive coordinator, there's a lot going on there that I think having Tollison would have been awesome to have, just to have kind of that steady, stable rock in such an important position. And now you're going to Giudice, who was a little shaky at times last year, ended the year relatively strong, but certainly not the best member of that offensive line. And I think Tollison's presence is going to be missed. I think people will know, and it might take a little bit for Mizzou's unit to gel now without him. And I think Giudice could be really good. I think there's a world where Giudice, the position change to center is a lot better for him than playing at left guard, and he looks a lot better than he did last year. But I think regardless, it's going to be hard to replace Tollison, as it is for any 4-year starter.
Yeah, without a doubt. We're coming into our top 2, and we've had the same 3 guys, just a little bit different. So I'm starting to wonder if we're going to have the same top 2. I'll start off with my number 2. I've got Keagen Trost, right tackle last year. You're smiling. Does that mean you got him too?
Yeah, we've got the same. We've got the same top 2.
He was the 3rd round pick to the Rams, just an absolute beast. 6'4", 360 pounds. It was just 1 year. So this is where I kind of had to think, what am I valuing more? And at the end of the day, he was a game changer. First team All SEC. He led the nation in PFF overall offensive grade and run blocking grade. You don't get a guy that does something so consistently for just 1 year. Like a guy that's transferring in his senior season, you're usually hoping okay, this guy has a lot of experience. He's gonna fit well. But Trost fit perfectly. And I don't think that happens very often. Shouldn't be just kind of blinked away. It's something that's pretty fantastic, and he's going to be hard to replace. The O-line is a positional group that has 3 returning starters. Trost is one of the 2 that needs to be replaced. And we've talked about it. Josh Atkins could be that guy, but obviously battled with some injuries, and he hasn't necessarily had the same peak, not really even close to what Trost had, but obviously Trost did really ramp it up last year. So there's a lot of hope that Atkins can play that kind of role, but nothing guaranteed. And I think it's really hard to get someone that's coming in for 1 season. He's going to give you his all and just be an absolute beast, an all first team All SEC type guy.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, the Trost situation last year, that's pretty rare. That's not going to be something that's you can rely on to happen year in and year out. You can get guys like Trost and be all right. They're going into their 6th year or 7th year. They're going to be solid. They're going to be steady presences. Elite like Trost, probably not very often. And that was pretty ridiculous. I mean, it was 4 weeks into the season, I kind of thought I haven't heard much about Keagen Trost. So I'm we're 4 weeks into the season and I'm not hearing much about Keagen Trost. It's because he's doing amazing and there's nothing wrong with him. That's why. That's why I'm not hearing about Keagen Trost. If you're not being talked about, it's because you're not doing anything bad as a lineman. So obviously that's not always the case. A little bit of exaggeration, but if you're not being brought up by the broadcasters, it's probably because you're not giving up any sacks, any pressures, or any penalties. But Trost was really, really good last year, obviously, in the unique situation. One of the best right tackles in the nation. He would have been playing, unless they were to flip it around, which I doubt they would, he would have been playing blindside for Austin Simmons this year, which is going to be interesting to watch because I don't believe Atkins has played blindside for a lefty too regularly. And Atkins now being tasked with depending or replacing Trost, that's going to be arguably the biggest ask on the team because it is just going to be, you can't exactly recreate a starting tackle in the aggregate like you maybe can a nickel corner or like you maybe can an edge rusher. You're not recreating your tackle in the aggregate because you're not subbing guys in and out throughout the game. Something's going wrong if you are. So having Atkins as the sole guy to replace Trost, that's why we had Atkins at number 2 on our most important players list that we did last month, because a lot of the offense is going to hinge on how good he is. And obviously he now is coming off a leg injury that last we heard from Drinkwitz in the spring could hold him out a few weeks in the beginning of the season, which that certainly would be good. And that would make Trost impact even more felt, or the lost impact, I guess, even more felt, because then you're going down to Luke Work, who's kind of a utility guy on the line, plug and play anywhere, but certainly not as good as Trost, or at least not yet, or Jack Lang, who's going to be a redshirt freshman and didn't play hardly at all last season. And so if Atkins misses some time, Trost impact is really going to be felt. Obviously, guys like Logan Reichert may be there, but he's had injury problems of his own, and he's probably more suited for the interior. So we'll see what happens there. But I think the loss of Trost, while obviously inevitable because he had no more eligibility, there was 0% chance of keeping him. It's going to be felt really, really hard. And I also think it's worth mentioning that Atkins had like a relatively similar career path to Trost in the sense he kind of bounced around, earned his way at full-time starter, ranked up throughout his career between spending some time at Houston, not really playing, in Hawaii, and then Arizona State. So, and then now going here for his final season, it does kind of just follow the Trost pipeline. So you know what? Maybe Atkins is just really awesome. And by like week 7, we're like, why did we ever question this? It's exactly what they did with Keagen Trost. Why did we think they couldn't do it with Josh Atkins? I don't know. Maybe we end up thinking that. But also, like we touched on, the Keagen Trost thing is pretty rare. So if Mizzou's able to do that in back-to-back years, tip my hat, because good grief, that's amazing. But I don't really expect that to happen. And I think that's why the Trost loss is so huge.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think we kind of nailed all the points on why Trost was so important. And big surprise, our number 1 is Zion Young.
Yeah.
Second round pick to the Ravens. Edge rusher was, if you think about the defensive unit last year, if you saw any, even if you're not a Mizzou fan and you saw any videos that went viral, it was probably just Zion Young just yelling at everyone in a good way and just getting everyone super hyped up before the game. Or maybe it was that video in the overtime game against Auburn where he had a hot mic. Zion Young was just a guy that brought so much energy to Missouri, and he also was spectacular on the field. He was 13th national in tackles for loss last year. He was 9th in the SEC in sacks, 1st in the SEC in quarterback hits. So not only did he bring this energy and hype everyone up and get everybody ready to go, he was this huge leader, and he was also a leader statistically. And he's just a guy that really put it all together. And it's going to be hard to replace him. Also, because we talked about this, the edge rusher room is a bit questionable right now. Obviously, they could put it together, but it's not a room like the linebackers where you're like, okay, I feel really confident at the start of the season. There's a lot of guys that are going to have to prove themselves. And Zion Young did take a huge step from the year before. So maybe Smith will be able to do that. Maybe guys like transfers like Morgan will be able to take a big jump in this year. Time will tell, but what he brought to the team is, as a leader and on the field, it's really going to be hard to replace.
Yeah, I think eventually in years down the line, some of these younger edge rushers, or maybe a guy that Mizzou gets even later down the line, you're going to find someone who is as good or better than Zion was on the edge. You are never going to find another personality like Zion. Not anytime soon. I mean, that guy is one of one. Good luck if you do. The alpha stuff at SEC Media Day, the hot mic, every press conference, that guy was awesome. You're just not going to find another one like him. He was like a ball of energy and hilarious at the same time, but obviously so clearly a leader. I remember before the senior game, Ahmad Hardy, all the guys had picked out seniors that they were dedicating the game to. and had kind of partnered up with Ahmad Hardy, who was obviously kind of the life of the offense and one of the more prominent faces of the team, obviously, both on and off the field. He chose Zion, and that was special to him to pick Zion. I remember him saying, and you can just tell, like, Zion's having an impact on guys on the other side of the ball. Zion is ridiculous. And then as far as his talent goes, yeah, he was just like a game breaker, just like a disruptor all the time, just always doing something to blow something up. He's going to be missed. He had 6.5 sacks, over 30 pressures last year, and then NFL draft pick now in Baltimore. He'll make some noise over there. And like you said, Zach, yeah, just not a ton of production that's surefire to replace. And I think that's kind of the most important thing to look at is when you're trying to gauge guys whose impact might be the most, or whose impact loss might be the most felt, you got to look at, okay, who's going to replace them? And when you look at the edge room, there's a lot of guys that you're like, he could. There's no one that you're like, he will. And for other positions, there are guys who are like, you will, or at least you feel, I think he 90% will, like Rodriguez and Woodyard, like we kind of touched on. I feel very confident that those guys can partner up to replace the Trotter production and keep Mizzou's linebacker unit at a really high level. With the edge room, I can't exactly say the same thing. It could happen. Maybe someone does break out and is similar level to Zion. I don't think it will, but it could happen. So I think that obviously is on-field talent, and then as off-field talent, I'll call that talent too. As a leader, as a personality, I'll call that talent. Both of his talents are going to be ridiculously hard to replace. And while you can make a debate that he wasn't the best player on either of our list, I do think we had it right that he's going to be the hardest to replace overall.
Yeah, without a doubt. And when we even talked about that Auburn game, when he was hyping everybody up before overtime, he went and backed that up and got a sack literally on the second snap. So that just goes to show how he put both of them together. It's so hard to have someone that has such a big personality as a leader to also be such a leader on the field and one of the best players on defense. This was a guy that was first team all SEC. So he wasn't just a leader vocally. He led by his actions. And I think that's really hard to replace.
Yeah, I think kind of some early signs of guys who are representing, maybe not to the same level because you just can't really get there, but a high level of energy is Nick Rodriguez early on. I think he's going to have some pretty fun moments this season. He's a big ball of energy. Also, seems like he's really stepping up as a leader. He was one of the guys Drink named as a spring captain. So I think you could certainly see Rodriguez stepping up as like an energetic leader. And then Banner seems like he's kind of taking lead of the safety room. Maybe not the same way that Zion leads the edge room, but I think Banner is definitely stepping up as a leader. So that's going to help to have on the defense. And then he'll also be a multi-year starter at this point. But yeah, there's not a lot of super loud personalities that scream at you like Zion did. But if we're going to see it, we're going to see it in the coming months as fall camp and the season begins to start. We're going to get to see these guys a little more, see how they adapt to newer roles, climb up in terms of the leadership chart where they're at. Guys who were third, fourth year last year, now fourth, fifth year this year, they're going to be maybe more vocal. So we'll see. But yeah, I think we're in agreement. Zion is the most important. If we want to do a quick run through of our list real quick before wrapping up, I had Zion Young as my 1, Keagen Trost as my 2, Connor Tolson as my 3, Damon Wilson as my 4, Dylan Carnell as my 5, and then my top 2 honorable mentions were Josiah Trotter and Toriano Pride.
I had Zion Young at my 1, Keagen Trost at my 2, Damon Wilson at my 3, Dylan Carnell at my 4, and Connor Tolson at my 5. My 1 honorable mention was also Josiah Trotter.
So a lot of similarities between Zach and I's list there. If you guys have your list or you think we said something dumb on our list, feel free to comment that down below. I don't think we said anything dumb, but if you guys think so, go ahead. Comment your list down below. Let us know what it is. Thank you guys for listening to the All Things Mizzou podcast, and we will be back next week.